Hey y'all, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series, RecoverED, RecoverED, Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We are so glad that you're here. Thanks for listening.
All right, welcome to the Magdalen House Big Book Workshop on Relapse Prevention. Thank you all for being here today. My name is Chloe. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic.
Hi guys, my name is Lisa Kroencke and I'm a recovered alcoholic.
Lisa.
And my sobriety date is June 2nd of 2007, and I'm grateful to be here.
All right. So like the introduction said, we are here to talk to you all about relapse prevention today. It's kind of, if anybody's ever gone to treatment before or through an IOP, it's kind of hot topic and an important one that we really feel strongly about. Lisa did some good research, and you want to start things off? You want to get things kicked off?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hopefully this workshop will be some new information. A couple of things. Relapse prevention is kind of a tongue-in-cheek. I hope you guys kind of got the sarcasm of that title of this workshop, because if you didn't, I'm really glad that you're here, for sure. What we could say is relapse prevention is 10, 11, 12, and close the meeting and leave. Because in essence, that's really what it is. I heard a great speaker one time. He literally did that in a meeting, and he closed the meeting and walked off stage. And I'll never forget that, because I didn't understand what he was talking about. I'm like, no, I want some depth and weight. Like, give me something because I kept relapsing. I got over 24 desire chips in the course of me trying to get sober. I looked at desire chips as a shaming tool, and I thought that the more desire chips I got, the more that I would have, that shame would provoke me to stop drinking. I literally thought that was the catalyst for everything, because I thought I was a bad mother. The second thing that Chloe referred to is I did a lot of research last night on relapse prevention. And so I know this is going to go out there in the world airways, but there was nothing. There was nothing that I could find. And I use Mr. Google hard. Google, I even went to the second page. If you want to find a dead body, go to the second page of Google. And there was nothing there. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity. We are grateful for the opportunity to talk about what the Big Book says about that, and also what our experience speaks to in our journeys. Because Chloe has a lot more of recovery than I do. But one of the things that I do know for sure is that it's not about time. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. So no matter if you have 28 years or 30 years, or Chloe, 30 years next year, or if you have 14 years, or if you have 14 days, we're all the same. Chloe and I are not special. We're not sanctioned by God to do this journey for as long. It's hard work. It's simple. But if it were easy, everybody would be sober. So we're hoping today to talk to you a little bit about what the process looks like in our journeys, and then to talk about, step 1, and then to talk a little bit about 10, 11, and 12. And then what we really want is to hear from you, to have a very robust kind of Q&A, question-answer session, because the questions, what we want to hopefully do is provoke the questions. Our job is not to be up here to have all the answers, but the questions are more important than the answers to me, because that means that you can leave here with an open mind and go to God and start processing some of the information. I know that we will as well, because you teach us just as much as we teach. That's what we're here to do together, is walk shoulder to shoulder and help each other through this. I will start by saying one of the first things I read about, and almost all the research I did, is that relapse does not have to be a part of anyone's journey. It doesn't. There's a lot of myths out there that relapse is just a part of it. I wholeheartedly disagree with that statement. It doesn't mean that relapse is a shaming thing. If you drink again, there's no shame around that. This whole program is not about shame. Shame is what we feel individually, but there's not one thing in this program about shame. It talks about progress. And sometimes that has to be about the progress. But if I can say one thing about the relapses that I went through personally, I want to talk about relapse, the word relapse, in just a second. That gave me the experience to talk to more women. Because if I didn't have the experience, you wouldn't trust us. We would just be a dark-haired woman, a blonde-haired woman up here trying to sell you on some steps. I say that all the time, but it's the truth. So if I don't make my relapse about me, I'm going to be free. If I make it about me, I'm going to be shackled to hoping that nothing happens again that's going to cause me to drink again. The second thing I want to say about this word relapse is that relapse does not happen when I take the drink. Everyone thinks, oh, I'm in relapse. Oh, girl, you're in active alcoholism once you're drinking. Relapse happens long before the drink. Long before the drink. I can't say that enough. The obsession to drink is the last thing that happens in a relapse. The obsession to be right, the obsession to be dishonest, the obsession to be in self, the obsession to be that I'm not going to release a resentment, which is selfish in itself, the arrogance, the stuff that I don't see that's blocking me creates this chasm between God and me, which allows my self-will to take over, and then I take the first drink. So it can happen days, months, even years. Have you ever seen someone so miserable, but they don't take a drink for a couple of years? I mean, how miserable is that? So that's some of the research I found out there, so I'm hoping that today we can talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I was thinking as Lisa was talking about the first relapse prevention group I went to in treatment, and the only thing I remember about it was that the tool that they sent me home with was, or I was in an IOP, and so I went home with this, tool in my tool belt, which was to think the drink through. That if I want to drink, that I just need to think about where that one drink will take me and play that tape all the way through to the end, which is the consequences, and that should be enough to stop me from picking up that first drink. I knew just sitting in that group listening that I would never be able to do that because I had had consequences since I was 12 years old. And I always just was this sort of optimist when it came to alcohol, that this time it's going to be different, and I'll keep my wits about me this time, and I just won't drive this time, or kiss your boyfriend this time. I'll keep my pants on, whatever it was. I always had this very positive outlook on how this time it was going to shake out differently. So sitting in that group, I experienced something that it's a very treatment term, which was white knuckle sobriety. I just had to hold on. I just had to always remember. I had to stay vigilant and never forget where that first drink would take me. And it was terrifying. It was a terrifying prospect. I knew before I left that office that I was going to fail at that, which I did. We'll talk about some ways that we are let off the hook from having to remember, because the book tells us that we have the failure to remember with sufficient force the pain and the suffering and the humiliation of a day, a week, a month, 10 years, 30 years ago. We can't do it, And so, for me, it's like I had once I really tried to stop drinking, I have not drank again since. I went to a different fellowship picking up key tags I got, I think, the first 3 months of key tags. I didn't ever stop drinking or using other things during that time. I didn't realize that you were only supposed to pick up these markers if you were abstaining. I was celebrating the amount of time I had been attending meetings. I just sort of had missed the part about that you were supposed to not drink in between. But once I went through the steps, I have never actively relapsed in picking up a drink. But what Lisa said is true. Relapse starts with that unprotected thought that precedes that first drink. And I have had the obsession of the mind at various times in my recovery. And I have just not picked up a drink, which again, being sober is a terrible experience without a solution. And that is not what we are offering here. I don't want to offer you sobriety. I want to offer you recovery. It's an entirely different experience. And so I never want that obsession of the mind to come back. I never want that restless, irritable discontent, that loss of a sense of purpose and joy and freedom that we get to have here. And, you know, that's, I hope, what we get to talk about here today with you also.
I think one of the first things that is Chloe, we also work together here at Maggie, so I'm very blessed to have Chloe as a teammate. But one of the things I like to do in my own life, and I bring it to work, is pull back and let's look at the bigger picture. Instead of looking at the tactics, if you will, about, you know, staying sober, staying in recovery, let's look at the bigger picture. For me, the bigger picture was all about step one. Everything goes back, in my opinion, and it talks about in the book as well, it's not just my opinion, in my experience, about step one. Are you very sure that once you put alcohol in your body, that you have the inability to stop abruptly? Doesn't matter how much you drink or what you drink, or it doesn't matter how you act when you start drinking. I don't care about any of that or any of the consequences of drinking. But when you put alcohol in your body, do you have the inability to stop abruptly? Call your numbers. Very specific in the book about that. Okay, first question. Second question is, do you have a mind that tells you you don't have an allergy? Do you have a mind that tells you that you can drink normally? Do you have a mind that gives you a circumstance outside of yourself, right, that tells you that you can take that first drink and drink normally? That's the obsession of the mind. That's what really kills us. That's why alcoholism is a mental illness, because I am the smartest person in the room, right? We all are. And I think that's why alcoholic women are some of the strongest women that I know, because we have a lot of self-will around it. We're stubborn. If I've had a step one experience which curled my toes, it got my attention every time. When we talk to Maggies up here, we're like, I hope you get to hear step one every day, because we'll hear, you guys talk about step one, we're tired of step 1, 2, and 3. Okay, well, good luck. You need to pack your bag right now, because you got 13 more days to hear about step one. Because did you see my eyeballs when I talked about step one? Do you know where I went to? I went to a multitude of experience where it was painful. So every time I sit in front of a newcomer, I get to experience the joy of being right here today. It's not the pain of step one. Why I cry so much is because I am joyful. Step one does not give me hope. Step one does not give me joy. It gives me relief. But what happens in that experience in my head is I get grateful all over again. Every day I get to live in gratitude, because I vividly remember waking up in the hospital and the doctor looking at me and saying, I can't believe you survived that. You should be dead. And the thing is, you guys, what's worse than being physically dead is emotionally, spiritually, and just feeling dead. So step one is vital to what we're talking about. Step one is vital to everything. It's the only step that you have to get 100%. So you will hear ad nauseum women's first step experience, because there might be something, in that story that you hear. So relapse prevention is embedded in the true understanding of your own truth. What is your truth? Is your truth around step one, the experience of the first 100, and then our experience? That's the commonality of it. Your children, your childhood, your bad marriage, all of those things are not about step one. They're not. Step one is key. I say this all the time, everything goes back to step one. If you've had a step one experience that curled your toes, that got your attention, you're going to listen. You're going to be teachable. And then God can get his or her foot in the door, and there's a little of sunlight there.
Yeah, and with that, when somebody is balking on step 9 or some of the things that we'll talk about later, it's not a step 9 problem. It's a step 1 problem. You don't believe that making those amends is the key to, recovery. You don't believe that you're going to die if you don't do that. And so any resistance that you have at any part of this journey is a step 1 problem. And so even at many years sober, it is important that I am always working with new women. So I am always back in step 1 and always re-experiencing the hopelessness of my first step experience, because that's where that desperation of the drowning man comes in. And I need that today as much as I did at 2 days sober, if not more.
Yes.
You know, one of my favorite lines in the book is that lack of power, that is our dilemma. Lack of power is what's wrong with us. Alcohol is not what's wrong with me. You know, and that is, I think, one of the biggest myths, and one of the things that Lisa and I were talking about earlier today, is that my problem is not alcohol. My problem is lack of power. And so when I can rework the way that I view what is wrong with me, it changes what the solution is. There are a lot of non-alcoholics in AA. There are a lot of heavy drinkers in AA. And what happens is that I watched these people take alcohol out of their life and their lives got better. And that's what it is with a heavy drinker, is their problem is alcohol. So you remove alcohol from their life improves. For the real alcoholic, my problem is not alcohol. So you take alcohol away, the problem is still there. You know, I still have this spiritual malady. I still have this obsession of the mind. I still have this general discontent that I walk around with. And if I don't treat my spirit by accessing power, then I'm going to drink again. There's no, you know, like Lisa was talking about, if you see those people that are a couple of years abstinent from alcohol that are miserable, that's what the real alcoholic without a solution looks like.
Go back to something that you said that was so powerful. On the flip side of that, there's a lot of people in the fellowship that the 12 steps get them sober. Like, they came into AA, their goal was to get sober, the 12 steps got them sober, and they're happy. So they keep coming back to AA because their goal is to stay sober. And so AA works for them because their goal is to stay sober. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Get that? Because I have to see some. Okay, good. Because that did not work for us. I got sober for a bit in AA. And guess what? I drank again, and this woman would tell me, well, just turn it over. Just keep coming back. Do it for your kids. I was drunk by 5. And so I thought that AA didn't work because I was misled to think that Alcoholics Anonymous was about getting sober. And that worked for that woman. She was staying sober. So she thought that's what the key was. But for the real alcoholic, it doesn't say that in the 12 steps. It says a spiritual awakening is the result, the only result. It's not about staying sober. Staying sober is a result of a spiritual awakening. So for the real alcoholic, that still keeps it interesting to me. If it's just about sobriety, I got sober a crap ton ago. But what keeps it interesting is growing in the spiritual awakening, have the little awakenings every day. It keeps it interesting. It keeps it fresh. It keeps this relationship I have with my higher power, something that I want to wake up every morning and be reborn and relearn. That is another key to this relapse prevention thing. It's nothing that I do other than wake up, be reborn, want to start again, and I'm looking for another woman that I want to see her lights come on. That's what keeps me going. I'm going to talk about an experience I had this morning. So anyway, pull back, bigger picture. We really wanted to touch on step 1. Mm-hmm. So fast forward steps 2 through 9. Charlie Brown's mom, right? We're going to get to step 10, right? So I would love to talk just a little bit about 10, 11, and 12, because living in 10, 11, and 12. True 10, 11, 12, as is described in the big book, is, I believe, the key to what a lot of people misrepresent as relapse prevention. There's a lot of, believe me, I looked at it last night, a lot of self-help guidelines. You know, thinking all the things that we hear, put the plug in the jug, or meeting makers make it, or just for 24 hours, 90 and 90. All of those are human, willful action items. And if you remember back in the day, the first 100, they didn't have meetings. They didn't have sponsors. They didn't have any of the things that they couldn't put the plug in the jug, you know? Those are all euphemisms that have evolved in the rooms of AA and the fellowship. But that's not how it was meant to be in the beginning.
Yeah. Well, can I touch on 4 through 9 for a minute?
Absolutely.
So we talked about lack of power. 10, 11, and 12 is going to be about deepening that power and developing a relationship, gaining access to that power or maintaining access to that power. 4 through 9 are vital because they are what remove the things within me that block me from that. There are a lot of women who know a lot more about God than I do. Some who are drunk who know a lot more about God than I do. It's not about knowing God. We can have deep belief, we can have faith, we can have a love for God, we can have a desire for that contact. I believe that we all have God in us, from the moment we are on earth, but we are so filled with self that we can't access it. And this isn't about believing in God or trusting in God or having faith in God. This is about having access to God. And so 4 through 9 is about removing those things that block me from being able to access that power. So it's about, in my 4th step, being able to, it's a fact finding and a fact facing process. It's about, and then in my 5th step, it's about giving these things to somebody else, sharing these things that are shameful and kind of looking at that stage character I've been playing. And then 6 and 7 is about, my defects of character and the way that we looked at in step 3 about how I've been running the show all my life trying to get what I think I need. It's all about that self-reliance, and it's about identifying and recognizing that self-reliance, but ultimately it's about giving it to God. It's about seeing these things but saying, I can't do any better than I have. We can wish to be moral, we can wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might. I could keep trying to do better. I was the queen of, I just need to remember, I just need to do better, I just need to, show up. I was always like remaking myself and recommitting. I do not have the willpower on my own to do any better than I did when I was at the end of my drinking. This is about 4 through 9 is about removing those things that block me from that power. And then 10, 11, and 12 is about growing in that, maintaining that open connection. People will say they're maintenance steps. Other people get mad about that. This is about maintaining an open connection, but always growing in understanding and then the effectiveness with that. But that's 4 through 9 is so important in that way. And also, in the book, there are a bunch of different areas where it tells us, if you keep doing this, you are sure to drink. It's like, and that's one of the things that I love. Like, the book really doesn't ever tell us not to drink. It's like, go to the bar, try some controlled drinking, try it more than once. But if you want to get over this, there are some like really big things that the book does say, and one of which is in sex inventory. And the book tells us that if my sex conduct continues to harm others, I will drink. If I'm not sorry and I don't correct my sex behavior, if I keep hurting others, I am sure to drink. So that tells me I've got to turn that around. I got to, what I love also about sex inventory is that, they're very careful to say your sex conduct is between you and God. But if people are getting hurt, that's where the harm is. We can't hurt other people. So that is one area in 4 through 9 where it is really clear, that we have to have some action there. The other one is in step 5. It tells me that if I skip that vital step, I may not overcome drinking. That's another one where it's very clear. Most of this is not about drinking. It is not about drinking, but it is telling me that if I do not correct these actions and these thoughts and these ways of being in the world, that I cannot maintain sobriety. And if I can't maintain sobriety, then I can't access God anyway. So it's all, it's all one big shit show in the end. But the other thing in step 9 that I love, it says twice in there, it was agreed at the beginning we would go to any lengths for victory over alcohol. That I have to be willing to face everything in my 9th step and correct all of my harms. That if I don't have that willingness, I am sure to drink. These are the relapse preventions. This is not about me, having self-care and doing, facials at night and, it's like bubble baths, like when you think of our triggers, which was another big treatment thing, triggers, it's like hungry, angry, lonely, tired. We'll talk more about that tomorrow in here. That's not what this is about. This is about changing the way that we show up in life. This is about us growing in understanding and effectiveness with God so that we can be the women that He intends us to be. And that is about cleaning up the past. That is about sharing our secrets. That is about us being willing to do the hard stuff, which allows me to get closer to God. It's not about the actions. None of it is about paying the money back, although paying the money back is important. But it's not about paying the money back. It's about those secrets and that lack of willingness in those areas. That's what blocks me from God. It's not about the money. It's about the lack of willingness. I don't know does anybody have any questions about that?
2, 3, 9 are vital, and I wish we had another hour to kind of go through that stuff, but just keep, Maggie's, we have a lot of women who talk in various times throughout our, curriculum, so if you can Google or go onto our website, and there's a lot of stuff around steps 2 through 9, actually 4 through 9. So a couple things that you said too, it's that once I have, for sure, I know I've identified myself as an alcoholic. One of the things that someone said to me that was key, because I'm a churchgoer, and I thought that was enough. I was there this morning. I'm like, well, then, I can't tell you how many times I went drunk to church. And my husband is not biblical, but he's more spiritual. And so, but he, goes with me, and but it's a really cool conversations that we have about the difference between believing in a God or higher power and dependence upon a higher power. And that's what the tools gave me in 4 through 9. For me, it was teaching me how to be dependent. I didn't want to be dependent on anything or anyone. I'm too strong and smart. I am a woman, but I was dependent upon alcohol. I couldn't live without it, and I couldn't live with it. So something had to change, a whole change, not just going to meetings. Something had to change in my DNA. And the other thing too that I think is really cool is it's not about why I'm an alcoholic. We hear that a lot. It's well, let me look at the past. Let me look at what happened or what I was doing wrong in this relapse prevent. What can I change? So it's not about why. Why is a thinking word. Please look at how. What actions did you take? When I look back at all of those, I think a lot of it was absence of information. I was ignorant about step 1, for sure. But even if I would have known about step 1 in those moments, I really thought why I drank was because of my husband's behavior. Once I heard step 1, truly heard it in my soul because I was ready to hear it. It was about the messenger for sure, but God is everything or God is nothing. So that I was in a moment where I could hear it. I was teachable. Circumstances did not. They don't make me an alcoholic, but they certainly got me teachable. Right? So this whole how thing is the action part of it. How, and I'm an alcoholic. How, the tools, how am I going to take the action every day? If I go into the whys, my obsession will come back for me. The other thing too that I think is really important is what are the motives for me doing this, right? What are my motives for staying in this program? Is it because I want a better relationship with my children? Is it because I want to repair my relationship with my husband? Is it because I want to prove to my mom that I am worthy? Because my mom told me I wasn't on many different occasions, on many different topics. In the end, my motive, I never wanted to drink again. That black hole was so deep and pervasive and killer. It's like I wanted to die and I couldn't. So again, step 1. So my motive wasn't about anything external. How selfish is that? In the beginning it was. In the beginning it was because I wanted to be a better mom. In the beginning it was because I wanted a relationship with my husband. But my alcoholism evolved to the fact that in the end, I just didn't want to feel like that anymore. I didn't want to die. I never wanted to drink again. Remember, and it says an honest desire to stop drinking? I think that's crucial because in the beginning, it was about externals. But in the end, I could see a wholehearted change that it was selfishly, I was tired of feeling dead. Does that resonate? I thought that was really a cool thing I heard at one point. I would love to get into 10, 11, 12.
Yeah,
Cool.
let's do it.
Okay. So, you want to start off with step 10?
Sure. I mean, I think step 10 is it's really the only place that I think in the later parts of the book for sure, that it talks so specifically about not drinking. And in really important ways. It's in fact the entire promises of step 10. So if we can go to page 84, I do want to just point out that, the steps are in order, so you don't get these 10-step promises until you are on the 10th step. But this is relapse prevention right here, 101, bottom of 84, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. We will seldom be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. We react sanely and normally, and we will find that this has happened automatically. Automatically. That's happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. That is the miracle of it. A miracle means that I can't manifest it myself. This is the miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a new position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. So that is huge, guys. I mean, the problem has been removed. That means it is not a problem for me anymore. I don't think about it. I'm in a position of neutrality means that I'm not having to work at it. It is not something that I have to spend any time or effort on. Alcohol is not an issue for me. At step 1, I could not imagine this. I couldn't imagine what it would look like for me to not have to worry about drinking or not drinking. I was afraid all the time that I was just going to suddenly find myself with a bottle in my hand, because that's what my whole life had been. This is telling me we don't have to worry about that. What a beautiful gift and a miracle that is.
Are you or someone you love struggling with the inability to stop drinking? At the Magdalen House, we believe that education about alcoholism and recovery is crucial to helping more alcoholic women and their families recover. Our staff is available to provide speakers to the public who will discuss the disease of alcoholism, how to help someone who may be struggling, and more available resources. To request a speaker, please visit our website at magdalenhouse.org/education.
It does not exist for us. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. That is our experience. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. And that bottom line is the caveat. We get that, but only as long as I keep in fit spiritual condition. That's keeping that channel open, and so that is the work that I have to do. I don't have to work on not drinking. I have to work at staying in fit spiritual condition. That's my only task here.
I love that. I just have to point out, so Lisa the newcomer, right? And Chloe the old timer, no notes. I was thinking, how do you do that without notes, dude? God. Maybe it's just age because you're so much younger than I am. But step 10, for one thing, I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous for those 10-step promises. And when I tell you how many times I swore it off, and now it's telling me that these people didn't swear it off, they didn't quit. Like, what? I thought we were supposed to be quitting. That was the whole thing. I wanted to quit, right? But what it's telling me is that I didn't do it. God does for me what I cannot do for myself, and I can't quit. But the other cool thing about step 10 is that step 10 is steps 4 through 9 all rolled into one. So the reason I'm going in order 4 through 9 is because I'm preparing for step 10 for the rest of my life. That's what step 10 is, 4 through 9 all rolled into one. One of the things that I learned throughout just a lot of pain in recovery is I have to find my selfishness and my resentment, because it talks about look for these things. Well, I'm willing to look at them. I can spot them because of 4 or 5. But selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear, I have to find those objectionable in the moment. How many times have I justified my resentment, my selfishness because of the way someone else acts? See it? That's justification. That's going to keep me as a victim, and victims stay drunk. There's no freedom in that either. So if I'm justifying my resentment, my selfishness, my dishonesty because of somebody else's behavior, I'm not free. I have the inability to own it. I don't find my selfishness objectionable because you forced me to do that. You made me feel that way, and I'm mad. Do you see it? A wholehearted 180-degree turn is that, yeah, what you did was crap-ola to me. It was horrible. Some of the things that my husband, and he's my husband again, so obviously God is good, but were really bad. We're not good. He even is the first person you heard in a workshop. He sat here and said, I was spiritually unfit, and what I did to her was wrong. I can't blame my drinking on his behavior anymore. Do you realize the beautiful freedom that there is in that? Because God can change me, and I can respond, not react, and Dave can be, or whoever you're thinking is fill in the blank, can be a jerk, and I never have to drink again because of your behavior. How beautiful is that? I have to own it first, though. I have to recognize that my resentment is a feeling that I allow, right? It doesn't say there's an absence of it. I'm not saying that I'm not selfish. I get resentment every day. I was in resentment on Friday morning real hard. I had to make amends to somebody. But I have a toolbox. I have a toolkit. And I see so much in the years of pain of just taking action when my sponsor tells me no matter what, go make an amends to that person, but they wronged me. I get that. I know they did. Make an amends anyway. I'm like, yes, ma'am. You know why? Because I never want to go back to that step one black hole. So I'm doing it. Even when I don't want to. It's not a feelings program. It's an action program. And the results are always better than I imagined. That's faith. That's where I learned to build and layer and build and layer, and the faith builds because I'm like, I thought I knew what the outcome was going to be and I didn't. How arrogant of me. I build, faith, mistake, build, resentment, faith. I do it anyway. Do you see? That creates a foundation. It takes years of enduring pain, even in recovery. You think this happens overnight? No. That's the hard part, the enduring. But in the end, that endurance builds hope. And that hope is literally what attracts a newcomer. That hope is how I bear witness. Through pain, through endurance, through doing what I don't want to do and do it anyway. And I tell you what, step 10 for me is key. That you get to act any way you act, and I get to be even more free. The more of a jerk you are, the more free I get, because it gets me closer to God. And I get to talk bad about you to my sponsor. So I loved the 10th step. It was a step that I didn't get for a long time. I thought it was just about calling and tattling on somebody. And my sponsor would go, when I would say, oh, well, Dave did this, she would almost hang up on me. Because it's not about Dave. She would go, start over, read page 84, and call me back. And then she would go, did you talk to God? And then she'd hang up. Right? And then I have to talk to God, and I have to get on my knees, and I have to pay, page 66 and 67, and then I call her back, I'm in resentment. Okay, now we got something to work with. Let's talk about that. How did you get the ball rolling? Well, I didn't. Okay, let's talk about that. I'm allowing that resentment to have power over me. That is how I made the mistake. I allowed that to have so much power over me that I can't even focus on my children. I can't focus on the women I sponsor. I can't focus on anything other than my resentment over you. How selfish is that? I'm like, oh God, Cindy, really? Okay, I'll go pray and get on my knees, right? And that repetitive nature of the 10th step is what adds layers to faith. Because I thought I was going to know the outcome. I didn't. Okay, I'll shut now. I can go on about that.
No, but and this is just me relating to that, but I went through a divorce a couple of years ago, and I would call my sponsor and say, okay, I'm pretty sure that this time you're going to agree with me. You know, I was like convinced, like, no, this time I've got you. I can trump it, and you're going to agree that I was the victim, and he was wrong. And he was super, super wrong. But there's a line, and I can never remember if it's in 4 or 5, where it says, as in war, the victor only seemed to win. I felt like I should be winning this. I should be winning because he's more wrong than I am. But there are casualties in war. And in resentment is the number one offender. You know, I cannot, it's the dubious luxury of normal men, right? I cannot risk my inner condition, my conscious contact with God over a resentment. It will kill me. It will kill me. And so my life depends on being free from resentment. And so over and over, I would go to her and I would say, he is the biggest jerk on earth. And she would say, okay, let's look at your mistakes here. And I would go to him, and again, guys, like, you have to trust me on this. I won't go into dirty details, but you would agree with me, he sucks, okay? Like, just for the record.
Witness.
And I would have to go and I would have to make amends for snarky comments or for not being principled around Father's Day and really having the kids show up well for him. Because my life depends on that. My life depends on acting differently, acting contrary to my, I want to step into that lowest form of myself. But the truth is, I love this life that I have, and I know that the only reason I have it is because I've taken action that goes contrary to what I want to do. And that doesn't mean that there aren't times that I have said the thing and hung up on him and then gone, oh, no, I know I'm going to have to apologize for that.
That sucks.
That sucks. That sucks.
Yeah.
But I want the freedom, and one of my first sponsors used to say over and over, Chloe, how free do you want to be? How free do you want to be? And just like with alcohol, I want it all. I've never wanted a little of anything in my life, and I want all the freedom. I don't want to just not drink. That sucks. I don't want to wake up and just like make it by. I want happiness. I want peace. I want, joy. I want all of these things. But I know that in order to do that, I've got to do the hard stuff. I want to read this next paragraph in 85 because this is what gets us, guys. So it says, it's easy to let up on the spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels. So that tells me this is a program of action. We have to work at this. We have to do things. Resting on our laurels. Laurels were those it was like the awards that they would give out in the Olympics. And so it's like the trophies of yesterday,
yes.
And so it's like, I want to rest on the 4th step that I wrote, last year, or the 10th step I did yesterday with my sponsor, or, the time I spent on my knees this morning. I want to say, I already did that. I already did that hard work. I've written so much 4-column inventory on my mother and on the ex-husband. I want to be able to say, but I already saw that. Why am I still resentful? This is stupid. Why am I going to write it again? I'm not going to see anything new. I've already done it. So it's easy to let up and rest on our laurels. We are headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. You know how it manifests for me at this point? In the thought, Adderall would really help me be a better employee. I was never an Adderall addict. But like that's how alcohol is a subtle foe. Or it's in he's wrong. He's wrong, or I'm running too late. I don't have time to get on my knees this morning. That's where the obsession of the mind starts, is in these little tiny shortcuts. These little ways that I am not seeking God in the way that I need to. Alcohol is a subtle foe. We are not cured of alcoholism. What we really have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance, and there's that word maintenance, of our spiritual condition. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will into all of our activities. And then this is a prayer. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. We can exercise our willpower along this line, all we wish. It is the proper use of the will. And so for me, that's what life looks like today. I am still doing the same exact things in my recovery today that I did at 7 days sober, at 7 years sober. It is this spiritual program of action. I still have to take the same actions. And I will always have to take the same actions. But that's what lasting recovery looks like, is maintaining that connection to God all throughout my day. Turning to God through every impasse, every questionable situation, and saying, thy will be done. That's where I get to exert my will, is aligning it with God's will. But I don't know what God's will is for me on step 3. It takes time and repetition in developing that relationship and working with other people, and day after day, when really it's step 11, step 10 and step 11, it's all through the day working on this, those intuitive thoughts, those, there was this guy that I just loved in my early recovery, and I remember he said, well, here's the thing. I was really constipated and I was sitting on the toilet and I said, well, if I bring God into all of my other activities, why don't I bring him into this? And so I prayed, and you know what? It worked. That's a little lowbrow, but this is about every aspect of my life, even where I don't think God belongs.
I love it, Chloe.
This is about seeking in every area, not I want to keep these little areas to myself where I don't want to bring God in, with my kids, because I think I know best for them. Or in my relationship, or in my finances, or in, these ways that I still kind of seek a little pleasure, shopping maybe a little bit too much, or excitement. I need to bring God into all of those areas, because that's where alcohol is a subtle foe. These little tiny secrets, these little areas that I'm maybe not being as principled as I need to be, or as I should be, or as I could be. These little dishonesties. And in step 5, the book talks about this stage character how we have this, we want to enjoy this certain reputation that we know in our hearts we don't deserve. And if I tell this dumb little white lie that I'm sitting down with a sponsee later, or if I'm telling my sponsee that she needs to make all of her amends, but I know that I've got a few hard ones on my list that I haven't made, I know that I'm a liar. I know that I'm a fraud, and that blocks me from God. It's not about the secret. It's about the fact that it blocks me from God. And back to that first step, do I believe that my life depends on having nothing blocking me from God?
Oh my gosh, yes. I thought so long that I had to be without selfishness or without resentment, and that meant that I was closer to God. That is a fallacy. That is a myth. Good God Almighty! I think I'm more resentful in recovery than I was before. I was drunk before, and now I am full-fledged, full-minded, resentful of you. Alcohol is loving everybody. So it's not the absence of resentment; it's I have a toolkit. 2 things I wanted to say about what Chloe said was so awesome. 1, maintenance. I heard this one time, and I love this so much. What we're doing here, the maintenance of our spiritual condition, is like maintaining a garden. I'm constantly weeding the garden and pulling the dirt over so it can grow new soil, so that it can grow new plants. If there's a bunch of weeds in there, I'm maintaining it, I can't grow new plants. So I've got to maintain it by weeding it out, turning the dirt over so God can grow this new spirit that I've been given, right? The other thing too that I think is so crucial for me, at least, to understand, this is what my sponsors told me, I love this, is that resentment and fear, they steal time. Think how much time that I have been in my head over resentment that I've not spent with my children, that I've not spent helping another alcoholic. It steals time. And you guys, if there's one commodity on this earth, believe me, from an old woman, that I feel like I'm 18, I cannot believe 30 years has gone by, and I look at these kids and I'm like, it goes so fast. Don't waste 1 second and give someone else that kind of power or real estate in your head. Is it really worth it? That's the obsession.
Yeah.
All right, step 11. I feel, for me personally, I don't know if Chloe feels this, we've never had this conversation before, we've had a million conversations, but I think step 11 is probably of the 3 the most important, because if I'm not in 11, I'm not in 10. If I'm not in 11, I'm not in 12. And 11 is the first one to go because nobody sees you doing it. Nobody sees you doing it. And I'll say, woman, I don't feel connected to God. Well, you're not, that's not, my job is not to be the barometer of my spiritual connection. I'm 10, 11, and 12. Maybe you're not supposed to feel connected today. I don't know, but how many times have you been on your knees? How many women have you helped? What have you done for someone else other than sit in your head? For me, step 11, the best explanation, and it's the step itself is beautiful in its explanation. It tells you what to do, how to do it, why to do it, the results that you'll get. I mean, it's right there in the step. If I'm building a relationship with my best friend, and I talk to her once a year, I'm not going to have a great relationship with her. I'm going to know about her kids. I'm going to know about what her vacations were. If I talk to this friend once a month, I'm going to know a little bit more about how she felt, how she feels about her husband, right? What her exercise program is. If I talk to my friend every day for 5 minutes, we're going to have a personal relationship, and it's going to grow. And I'm going to listen to her. She's going to listen to me. We're going to talk. Yeah, my day was messed up. So for me, that relationship, that's how it becomes personal and not this ethereal God thing out here that I thought was so weird when I first came to AA. It's like, okay, that like looking up and the halo and all. I was like, okay. But when I made it personal, when I repetition, frequency, it's all about that. All 3 steps. When I got on my knees every morning and I listened and I said and I talked and your plan sucked yesterday. That's my relationship. But I'm going to do it anyway because I trust. That's faith. And going through a divorce and not having your children for a whole week is not natural for a mother. It's hard to wave goodbye to your kids for a week with a little dog in the back. I mean, it's just, your plan sucks and now I'm alone. Yeah. And I don't like it. Then I'm going to go help another alcoholic because I'm making that about me. And I remember saying, I get it. Divorce is about helping someone else. I get it, my experience, but I don't want to do that. I remember saying that on my knees. Your plan sucks. That's my relationship. And I tell you, that's how it grew. Because I started seeing little God moments in all of that. So many I can't even go into, but through that, don't be afraid to be honest, because God already knows anyway. That's my vanity or my arrogance, thinking that, I know more. I don't have to say that. And it's, for me, it became real in step 11. All day long. Like I had to stop the other day at work and go into my office and pause. I'm like, I'm about to blow my mind. I'm like, And Chloe was right there, but it's a discipline to respond, to walk away. That's why it's in step 11, pausing. For me, it was a discipline that the hardest part for me was not being, even when I'm right, to walk off. Do I value the ego or do I value the relationship? And the relationship is not with Chloe. The relationship I'm talking about is with God. Do I value my ego or do I value my relationship with God, not with Chloe? So that's why I walk off and pause and pray. Because I'm not praying so that I can have a better, I'm praying because I promised God I would do that for the rest of my life. That's why I do it. It's vertical. I used to think it was horizontal. I go and pray so I can be nicer to Chloe. Oh no. I go and pray because I promised God I would do that, because my job is to fit myself, right? To be of maximum service to God and the people. That's how I fit myself, as I go talk to God. That's step 11 for me.
I got nothing.
No, yes, you do.
Well, I was, I've had a few women just recently, in like the past 3 days, call me and say, I don't like doing these nightlies. I don't like doing these nightlies because I feel like I'm just looking at all the ways that I fail and all of the bad things. What about the good things? What about the good things? And I keep saying it's the good things don't get you drunk. The good things aren't what block you from God. But like what Lisa said a minute ago, this isn't like the point of step 11 or the point of any of this isn't about having nothing on our nightly. It's not about saying, I wasn't resentful today, I wasn't selfish, look at me, I was perfect today. That is never going to happen. And I think that the more spiritually awakened we are, the more we see. My nightlies are pretty like detailed. I fall short in every aspect of my life. And that doesn't mean that I failed. That means that I'm human and I am driven by wanting to be okay all the time. And I still live in the delusion that in order for me to be okay, you need to sing and dance in a certain way and tell me how pretty I am and, you know, give me chocolate. And so this is just about being awake enough to see all of the ways that I still show up selfishly. It's not a failure. You know, the failure is when I'm saying, I did great. I had no resentments. I had no selfishness. I'm the winner. You know, that is delusion. You know?
Yes.
So,
oh my gosh, yes.
I think that that's like a way that we need to re-look at step 11, that, you know, we're not trying to have an empty piece of paper there. We're just trying to see with a new depth. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not at that step.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm doing my reading and praying a lot at night, but I'm not actively doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, is it just your own conversation with God, or do you actually write it down? I mean, what do you feel is the best way that you get the most out of that?
I think that would be a sponsored question, because I think people do it differently. I get the most out of it writing, but writing is just a spiritual exercise for me. But I know other people who just do it in their head. They'll read, they'll sit, they'll meditate, and they'll do it internally. So I think it's, you know, I would go with sponsor direction on that. Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a...
No, I think, like I said, we could probably spend another hour, I think, on step 11, because I really believe that I thought that step 11 was just at night and just in the morning, and or I thought that, you know, I was mistaken, and I was corrected in my home group meeting one night because I was a newcomer, and I was, well, you know, I do step 11 at night in the morning, and I had this guy raise his hand right after me, and it hurt my feelings. He said, well, you know, the book says on page 88, all throughout the day, right? Step 10 is me looking for my defects of character. God gives me the awareness. Step 11 is all throughout the day, I'm bringing God into all my activities. And I mean, my sponsor had me put sticky notes on my computer, in my car, in my bathroom mirror. Thy will be done. I'm telling you, I had it all over everywhere. I even had a red towel, because I would wake up and I'd forget to pray. And you guys heard my story, you've heard about the red towel, but I would forget to pray in the mornings. I would just, la la la, I'm so happy, just get up, thank you God, you know, la la la. So my sponsor had me get a Bed Bath & Beyond and buy this red towel. I had to put it beside my bed, so every time I woke up, I'd see the red towel. I'm like, oh, knees time. And that's how I got to the habit of doing it. I physically had to go to the store and get a red towel and put it beside my bed, and I'd look at the red towel and go, oh, time to get on my knees. And that helped me. That was a discipline. And the other thing, too, I just have to say, because women here, I was embarrassed in front of my husband. I was. And it's cool because I would do that because I felt like I was on my knees, like I was in a very vulnerable position. I didn't want my husband to see me vulnerable because I was pissed off at him all the time. And right, you know, but I did it anyway. He told me later on that was one of the most powerful things that he watched me do. That I was really doing that in front of him, and he didn't believe in the whole spiritual thing like I did. But when he looked back and he came back and we talked a lot, he said, when you were doing that, with that disregard for the way I felt, that was powerful. I'll never forget watching you do that. Even though you knew I was making fun of you, because I knew he was judging me. I did. And he was. I never wanted to go back to step 1. I'm telling you, that black hole has to. That's why stage 4 alcoholism is the most beautiful place. Because it's about what you feel, it's not about physical. And I'm grateful for that every day. Step 11 is really powerful for me.
And one thing I just thought of, and I am pretending that I know that this is what happened, but I'm assuming, like, what the action that Lisa took there, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but would have been telling her sponsor that she was forgetting to pray. You know, and that, like, she couldn't remember to pray. And so she went to her sponsor and said, I'm forgetting, and allowing her sponsor to give her some direction. Like, those are the things that we can do. That's what we have power over. That's what we have choice over. We have choice over being, setting aside our pride and ego and saying, I can't remember to pray, and then letting somebody else chime in and trusting that they have experience that can maybe help us. And then going and buying, I'm sure that red towel probably did not match your decor.
No, it did not. And that's why I thought she was mean, because she didn't have me buy a pretty gray one.
And how free do we want to be?
Yeah.
These are those areas that we think we can manage on our own, and it doesn't matter. Like, how much can that matter? How much does it matter if I just pray later, in my car driving with a cup of coffee and, the kids? And it's about being teachable. It's about humbling ourselves in front of God, but also in front of other people, in front of our sponsors. Sponsorship is just such an important piece of this whole thing. Because I don't know, I only have my experience, and me reading this book, especially, even today sometimes, but especially in the beginning, I couldn't retain anything. I would read it and it would just be gone. I had the attention span of a fruit fly. I needed somebody to sit down and read through it line by line and explain and tell me her experience and give me direction. And with that true first step experience, I was willing to do whatever she told me, because I knew that I didn't have a solution, and I knew that she did.
Awesome. Okay. And so let's move on to step 12, because we really want to have some Q&A afterwards. And we're making Chloe leave here at 2:30 for various reasons. So I'm just telling you right now. I can say at later, but I'm making you leave. I love you. Okay, step 12. So having had a spiritual awakening is a result of the steps?
Is that what it says?
No. Yeah, no, it does not. Myth.
That is a myth.
It's the only result of these steps, right? The only result. Not getting sober, not being nice, not being a better mother, not being happy. Good God, happy is really overrated anyway sometimes. But the cool thing about having had a spiritual awakening is that it's for everyone. Everyone. I don't care what your malady is. It's just that alcoholics, when someone is self-righteous or in judgment, like a normal drinker is in that, guess what? They get to go to bed at night and nobody knows they were self-righteous or judgment. No one knows that they were selfish or inconsiderate all throughout the day. But guess what alcoholics get to do? We get to be out there and everyone sees it, right? Everyone sees when we start drinking. Our malady manifests itself in this behavior that everybody thinks that alcohol, I wish alcohol were not in the word alcoholism. The cool thing about the spiritual awakening is that, for me at least, alcoholism, that's why I am so grateful to be an alcoholic. If I could take a pill and drink normally today, I would not take it. I heard that when someone said that in a meeting. I thought she was lying. I get it now. Because I think one of the greatest things about a spiritual awakening is there's no finish line. Every day, you think we'd be doing this for her? 30 years. Give me, God, I can't even imagine that. I feel like a newcomer around Chloe. Because she inspires me, because it's still interesting to her. It grows, it manifests itself, it evolves. Some days you like it, some days you hate it. It's life. And it's like the wedding banquet. It's in a different book. But because some of it's good, some of it's not. But that's the spiritual awakening. It's not a one-time event. Sobriety is an event. Recovery is an experience. And I love that I get to watch women like Chloe, and that inspires me to want to continue to do it. Like, if it's still interesting then, I'm like, wow, I can't wait for the journey. The journey is the awakening. The journey is not an event. It's all, I'm awakened every day. So having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. Remember, the steps do not get me sober. We could do a whole workshop on that. We talked about that this morning. The steps do not get me sober. If the steps get me sober, I'm probably not a real alcoholic. And that's a bold statement. Because see how the end result, if I'm just getting sober, that's just about me. That's selfish. Recovery is about someone else. So I don't know if you want to say anything before we move on to the next little phrase of step 1, but anything about the spiritual awakening?
I just want to read that first paragraph in step 12.
Oh.
Because it's one of the other times that it talks about not drinking. This is like one of the big.
What page?
It's on page 89. So first paragraph. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much provide relapse prevention. That nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. And so intensive work with other alcoholics, that does not mean, giving them rides. That does not mean lending them money. That means carrying this message to them. That means sitting down and taking them through the 12 steps. That's what intensive work with other alcoholics looks like. That is the message that we are carrying, is that we have had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. And so that's what we're armed with, and that's what will provide that immunity from drinking, which again is just the byproduct of what we really get here, which is that spiritual awakening. That's what we're seeking here. And like Lisa said, I would love to do a workshop on this, but I was telling her this story. It was actually the same guy that I was talking about earlier. I went to this workshop that he did when I was, in my first year or two of recovery, and I was like, a big book thumper. I was in this really dry little town in Maine, and I had just made it my mission basically to make every old timer hate me. And so I was just so mouthy and obnoxious. And I would talk about, we write this in black and white, and I was just so into the process of I was a fourth step thumper, really. It was all about step 4 to me. And I loved this guy. I listened to all of his tapes, and he was sitting in this workshop, and he said, "This book is not the solution." And I sat there and I went, "Wait, what?" And he said, "The 4th step is not the solution. Your sponsor is not the solution. These meetings are not the solution. These are all tools which get us to God, and God is the solution." And it was like, whoosh. And I had known that, of course I knew that on some level, but I had rearranged my priorities. I had forgotten. I thought that if I just checked these boxes, if I just got on my knees and said the prayer and did the inventory and, did that, 11th step, and I sponsored the people, if I just checked these boxes off, then I was going to be okay. And that's not what this is about. This is about seeking. This is about seeking and developing this relationship. And that's what will keep us sober. And that's what will keep us recovered.
When she said that this morning, my mind was blown. I'm like, yes. Because the book, we get so into the mechanical parts of the program that we forget that it's about God. That this book is just a tool. The big book is just a tool. They're all just a tool. And the main part of it is to getting us into a relationship that will evolve. Now, the cool thing about that second part of we tried to carry this message to other alcoholics is, so I had an experience this morning, I think I was talking about earlier, but to watching a woman that I sponsor talk to a group of people, and I got to sit in the audience. She never mentioned my name because I don't need all that. I need it to, we all need it to be God, right? I'm just a vessel here. Chloe and I are not special by any, but for me to get to sit in a sea of 200 people, nobody knows my name, nobody knows me at all, but for me to get to watch her up on stage being interviewed by this man or whatever, I had an out-of-body experience. I had an out-of-body experience that I could be the vessel that helped transform this woman that was going to go out there and help other women. When I tell you it was a transformative, how can you never want to do that for the rest of your life? This woman was dying. I tell you, her mom and dad had wrote her obituary, and I was talking to them about it. And now she's got 6 years sober. She's up there, and she's vibrant, alive, so full of joy, and helping so many other people. And then I get to be an anonymous part of that. There's nothing more beautiful. No glass of wine ever gave me that kind of high. That is a suitable substitute. But the bottom line is she came to me because she wanted what I had. I was doing 10. I was doing 11. I was in 12. You guys, that is the suitable substitute. If you're sitting there and you're thinking, well, I'm miserable in my recovery. I'm not, you're making it about you. And I don't know that for sure, but when I was miserable, I was making it about me. But when I shared that, and then I got to sit back and she didn't mention my name, thank God, because my ego would take over. Oh, look what I did, right? And I threatened her life because we need for other people to see that it's not about Chloe. This is not about Lisa. This is about God. And anyone can do what I witnessed today. I'm not special. I just read the book and to her. That's all I did. But to sit back is the greatest, most beautiful pyramid scheme ever. And if you want to ensure immunity, intensive work with alcoholics, it's not the work for me, it's watching the outcome. It's watching the results. It's actually seeing this woman who's a different person and she's free. And people want what she has. And so the ripple effect is vast. It's not just the woman that she works with. Her family is reunited. Her brother and sister respect the crap out of her. She spent Christmas with us one year because her family disowned her. I remember my sister going, who's the blonde chick at the table? She just walked in, was a mess, and I just said, sit down, get some turkey, you're fine. Right. And she just got out of jail. And she'll tell you the story that you guys, come on. If we're just making this about not drinking, you're missing the most beautiful part of it. And there's no better foundation for relapse prevention than that. Because I told Lauren today, I go, after I said, you know what you did? You made me want to go out and help another alcoholic today. You helped me more than I helped you. Because she goes, no. I go, no. See my family right there? That's what you did for me. Because I get to go out and help another alcoholic. And no one benefits more than our families. That is the most beautiful part of the program. And that, to me, is the greatest one-pillar foundation for relapse prevention. It is the greatest part of this program. Step 12.
Yeah, step 12.
I just had this mind-blowing thing this morning. It was just beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
It was beautiful. All right.
That's a question?
Okay.
So that everybody's crying.
Open the question. Sorry.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels by searching for the Magdalen House.